What if Deku has the power of Sukuna? Let's start, bro.
Human suffering. A pain-induced collective, only brought about by humanity's own folly. In this hero-run society there are many things for humans to loathe, and many that cause them such strife. Many things that cause history to repeat itself. For without evil, there can never be good. For without destruction, there cannot be creation. Without chaos, there will never be peace. The current super-powered world is chock full of these negative emotions. Parts of the world have begun to suffocate as many others rose above their peers and declared themselves the greatest. In turn, this caused years of conflict and a larger influx of negative human emotion, spawning what could only be known as cursed spirits. Though select few knew of their existence, or could even perceive them. This stems from the fact that people are not, and will never be born equal. It's the harsh reality of humanity, and many don't realize this fact as they continue the reproduct. The same hubris as their ancestors. One such boy is an exemplary example of such effects on the daily. A middle schooler by the name of Izuku Midoriya, a boy who had been so indifferent, so imperturbable, that he just couldn't feel negativity, nor positivity in his life. He was just a husk, and bore the worst curse of them all. Loneliness. A boy who had suffered the effects of bullying and ridiculed his whole life just for not having some special power that would help him rise above everyone else. Rise above. That looked down on him. The boy had been through so much, even after trying everything he could to be optimistic, to be what a hero should be. Only to have his dream crushed time and time again. His life had been filled with nothing but hardships, from his father being nearly non-existent, to being bullied constantly for being quirkless, to having his mother never belly in his dreams, never encouraging him to conquer the challenges he'd be faced. He was the epitome of human suffering at this point, and it seemed that nothing would look his life. He would continue down a spiral of despair and his accursed living. Hence why said boy is now sitting above his school's rooftop, his legs dangling off the side of the building as the wind blew idly, late at night with the feeling of nothing onc. Again. He stared off at the setting sun, sighing as he felt the wind blow past him. He had considered doing it many times over, but never was he this close to the breaking. It seemed as though he had reached his wit's end, and perhaps it was time. Time he took that blonde bastard's advice. It was the end of Izuku's class, and he knew the blonde was going to come at him right after class. He needed to get out of there before he got any more burn scars on his. Izuku absolutely detested the very thought, no, the very idea of pain, but alas, escaping the boy was a lot more difficult than one might think, especially when his lackeys surrounded his desk. We ain't done here, Deku. The blonde, named Katsuki Bakugo stated, slamming a hand down onto Izuku's desk. The brunette slowly lifted his head and gave Bakugo blank dead stare as the blonde tried to intimidate Izuku, or at least get some sort of reaction out of him. These kinds of interactions had become the norm for the two of th. Since Izuku was diagnosed as quirkless. His hatred of the blonde grew with every passing day, until eventually, he felt nothing. He was eerily calm while seething with rage. You know, the best heroes out there showed promise even as students. You want to go to UA? Well, too bad. I'm the only one getting accepted, so don't even try it. You're me, and you need to accept it. Bakugo stated, placing a hand onto Izuku's shoulder as his school jacket started to get singed from Bakugo's slight use of his quirk. Izuku sighed, another burn he'd have to try and get out of his school uniform. The fifth one this week, and frankly, he was tired of it. The brunette suddenly gripped onto Bakugo's wrist, crushing it with quite a bit of force, without even realizing it. Can we not do this today, Kachan? I've got things he said as the explosive Pomeranian grunted in pain. Izuku realized what he was doing and released the boy's wrist as fear spiked throughout his body. He was truly in for it now. If he didn't run, Bakugo was going to quietly blow up in his face. Izuku quickly packed up his things and sprinted for the door. Izuku wasn't blessed with a quirk, but he did have high physical prowess, being scouted to be on many of the teams for his school, which he declined in favor of trying to be a hero. He could never see himself in any sort of sports activities, nor did he really expect himself to survive. Just his strength and speed alone. There are many out there in the world who could beat him even with his strengths. You bastard. Bakugo shouted, holding onto his pain-filled wrist. You want a quirk so bad, jump off a damn roof and hope you get it in the next life, US. Deku. The blonde screamed as Izuku exited the classroom, not even bothering to pass him a glance because he was too afraid. His physical prowess definitely came in handy for moments like this where Bakugo tried to get physical, but the backlash was always the same belittling and abuse since were children. It always went back to him being quirkless, to him being useless. To him feeling utterly helpless as a quirkless child, he just wished that once that someone would tell him he could. That's all he needed. Izuku would spend the rest of his night idly wandering around his school until nightfall, the time that Izuku would have to go visit his mother, but as he wandered the show, words from Bakugo himself rang throughout Izuku's mind. Perhaps jumping off of the roof would solve many of his current problems. Maybe it was foolish of him to have thoughts, but now it seemed as though life would never get any better for a guy like him. A plain boy who can easily blend in with a crowd, someone who could and would stand out as a hero. There would be nothing left to worry about, or to feel. The idea, it was oddly compelling. He could escape all of his problems just at the blink of an eye. Perhaps the sui of death would provide Izuku with a much brighter life. One that wasn't his own. And now here he was. He had wandered to the roof of the school, and sat down on the edge, just admiring the night sky presented before him. The sun had finally set. It was most likely his time to try and get out of there. He wasn't stupid enough to just throw himself off of such a small building, as much as he wanted to. It's not like it'd him right off the bat, and boy did he hate pain, but if he could, if the opportunity arose, perhaps he should take it. He would die either way. Suddenly the sound of glass breaking and the roof beneath him shaking brought his attention to his feet. It seemed there was some kind of conflict happening nearby. Villain had entered the school. And while Izuku wasn't exactly a fighter, nor was he a hero by any means, he could hold his own in a fight. He should probably call the Politha. Getting into a fight with a villain without a quirk wasn't smart. Maybe they could contact a professional. I've gotta get somebody, Izuku mumbled as he dashed for the roof door. Something had told him that he needed to get out of there and contact a professional hero. Might even just the police if anything, but he'd soon be halted entirely. Suddenly a nearby wooden enclosure's small doors would burst open and a small creature would appear from said enclosure with what appeared to be a human finger in its small slime-like hand. The greenette was perplexed. What kind of quirk did this thing have, and why was it so obsessed with that finger? Wait, how did it even get that thing? The creature, upon realizing it was spotted by Izuku, charged straight for him, fearing that it was one of those jujutsu sorcerers. It seemed to act off of some sort of prima instinct. When it felt threatened it would attack. Simple as that. Whoa. Hang on there. Izuku panicked, instinctively socking the creature in the cheek, forcing it to drop the finger in its hands. The greenette would then pick up the thigh. And upon further inspection it appeared to be some kind of mummified finger, but was red like beef jerky. What the hell is this thing? Izuku questioned, not realizing that the small creature from before was growing more and more massive, snapping the greenette back to at. Only when it roared ferociously. A massive slime-like creature stood tall over the boy. Holy shit. The creature would charge once more at Izuku, forcing him to dodge roll out of the way, before gunning straight for the stairwell. There was no way in hell he was going to. Here because of some fucked up mutant. Oshi Toshido Shido shit. The boy shouted, leaping down each flight of stairs as the strange entity was hot on his tail, thrashing against walls, and roaring loud to shatter windows. Suddenly the greenette would trip and fall, dropping the finger in his hand, before turning around to face the creature that now slowly stalked towards him. Its eyes shift. The finger that now laid on the ground, and in a bold act of foolishness and fear the greenette fumbled to grab the finger, tossing it into his mouth as the creature opened it to swallow the boy whole. Suddenly the world turned dark. Izuku was surrounded by pure nothingness, until a voice suddenly called out to him. It's been some time since I've had a human bow. The voice was deep, and as Izuku peered up it appeared that he was inside of a massive ribcage. Odd. The greenette would begin to rack his brain as to what was happened. Was he just swallowed by that creature? Was he in hell? Wait. I can't control him. Hey, kid, what's your deal? The deep voice called out once more, urging Izuku to turn and face whoever this man was. The man was tall, and, some odd reason, appeared to be a much older version of himself with some very odd tattoos, and 2 sets of eyes. Izuku questioned, shaking in fear as if he was some lost child. Scratch that, that was definitely what he was in this situation. A sassy, depressed, lost child. Don't. Me. I'll kill you, youngling. State your name, and explain to me how you are suppressing me. The man demanded, slamming a hand onto his throne that lay. Mountain of Skulls. Judging from what he was saying, it was safe to assume that they were talking through Izuku's subconscious. I'm Izuku Midoriya. The boy introduced, bowing out of the sheer authority of this strange man's presence. A is for suppressing. I don't really understand what you am. It seems this kid is physically strong, but acts timid when frightened. The man pondered, cupping his chin as he sighed. Izuku would watch as the man fell silent, expecting some sort of introduction in return. But his willpower, it's incredible. He's able to suppress me without much mental strain, if any at all. Excuse me for asking, but, who exactly are you? Izuku questioned, taking a look at his surroundings once more. The area was empty, and yet he could hear voices, some his own, some were from this man before him, and then there was another. It was a new voice, someone he wasn't aware of. I'm Ryomen Sukuna. That's all you need to know. Sukuna introduced himself, before pointing a finger at the greenette and scowling. He could use this boy to get his full back, but with his willpower stopping him he'd have to relinquish control over the body back to him. Perhaps you could prove useful to me, though. What are you talking about? I'm not just gonna let you use me, I've gotta get something out of it at least. The boy responded, scowling slightly at the man. Sukuna's fac would churn in anger before with the flick of a wrist Izuku's neck was being wrung out by the man. Your gall is annoying. Don't talk down to me as if I can't kill you, boy. Sukuna stated, before releasing the greenette from his hold. Now, I think it's time for you to wake. Suddenly Izuku stirred, and a light slapping of his trainer-to-be, Gojo Satoru. He's not coming, you know. You're going to just live without a purpose, so why not just let me take control? Sukuna's voice spoke, a mouth appearing on the greenette's ch. Izuku simply rolled his eyes and slapped a hand, or the mouth until the man's muffled. What a drag, the greenette stated through a sigh. It appeared that this was all a scam. Probably just a prank to mess with some kid that was stupid enough to actually him. So what are we looking at? A voice spoke. Turning his head, Izuku realized that it was Gojo himself, though he wasn't clad in his attire from the night before. Instead, was adorned in a button-up shirt and black pants, way too formal to be on the beach, but what really was the kicker was his round sunglasses that revealed his almost luminescent sky blue eyes. You actually came. I was starting to think this was a scam. Izuku retorted, scowling as the man smiled nonchalantly and headed down the stairs onto the sand, signaling Izuku to follow him. So what exactly are you going to teach me? I'm glad you asked. The man exclaimed, swiveling on his heel as he turned to face the greenette. I'm going to show you how to use cursed energy. Cursed what now? The greenette mimicked, one of his brows raising in confusion. What the hell was cursed energy? Was this guy just crazy or something? Cursed energy. The man stated before holding out a hand as a red blast shot out of his hand and completely obliterated one of the trash heaps beside them. Izuku's face. Stuff like this. I'm gonna show you how to use stuff like this. What the hell was that? The greenette questioned, the shock in his tone causing Gojo to chuckle. Inexperienced people always had the same reaction when see cursed techniques for the first time. You're telling me I can do stuff like that? What the hell is that? It's cursed energy. I just told you. Pay attention. Gojo stated, slamming his fist onto the greenette's head. I'm sure you're new to it, but he isn't. Suddenly a mouth would once again appear on the greenette's face. Don't speak of me like I'm not here. Once I gain control of this boy's body, I'll kill you. The man rev, only to once again be suppressed by Izuku. Shut up. You're annoying. The greenette exclaimed, slapping a hand over his mouth once more. Gojo watched in amazement at just how well he was able to suppress the vengeful spirit firsthand. Anyways, what about him? You must know something about him, right? Well, about that, I am actually supposed to kill you for being Sukuna's vessel. The man revealed, causing Izuku to freeze in fear for his life. Don't worry, I'm not going to. Yet at least, I need people like you who can grow almost as strong, if not, as strong as me. Wait, I can be as strong as you if I train under you. The boy questioned, a shimmer of hope appearing in his eyes, causing Gojo to smirk. This kid truly was hopeful, and liked to see that in a protege. He nodded with a bright smile on his face. Sukuna would sit atop his throne, watching these events unfold and roll his eyes. This kid was seriously unaware of how he was being used. There seriously had to be some wrong with him, though the negative emotions brewing within him would prove otherwise. Perhaps there was more than he let on. This kid. So what's this Sukuna guy's deal? He seems like a pretty big deal. Izuku questioned, purposefully drowning out the shouts of Sukuna in his thoughts. He's pretty annoying. Be honest. Well, he's a vengeful spirit. He once was human, and was so good at using cursed energy that he basically ruled over the world for years until he died. Gojo explained, against a trash heap as he conversed with the greenette. Before he died, however, he cut off his own fingers so that he could live on, and I have been hunting down so that they don't get into the wrong hands. Most people can't handle his power, spirit or humanity alike, which is what makes you such a special case. So what's the deal with this curse energy? What's it all about? He questioned further, stretching his hand out into a gun-like motion, mimicking Gojo's action of show. Red blast of energy out of his hand, albeit without much success. Well, it's basically controlling your negative emotions into an energy output, the man started. However, there is a difference between cursed energy and cursed technique. You basically have to refine that energy into some kind of technique in order to do anything, but it's kind of innate. So you mean my technique is already set in stone? Like I can't do what you do? The boy questioned, frowning as he realized he'd never be able to shoot cool laser beams. His hands. Pretty much. Gojo revealed, lifting off of the mound of trash that he was leaning on. But that's why we're here. To make your technique almost as strong as mine. So, I'm gonna teach you the basics. Right. Izuku confirmed, excitedly nodding his head before the man held up a strong-looking doll. Was this some kind of weird game? What's that? Your first lesson. The man revealed, placing the doll into Izuku's hands before he was violently punched square in the jaw by the stuffed creature, knocking him onto the Ow. What's that thing's problem? Izuku shouted, rubbing the spot where the creature had struck him, glaring at the man who began laughing at the greenette's pain. Funny. Sorry, I guess I should have explained everything first, my bad. The man said, a goofy smile present on his face as if he completely meant to do that and wasn't sorry. It one bit. Think of cursed energy like electricity, and cursed techniques like appliances. Electricity is hard to use by itself, but when used with appliances it can achieve VAR results. You have to be brimming with negative energy in order to do any of that, and this doll falls asleep when exposed to it. So the doll just takes that cursed energy and uses it to sleep. And I'm assuming it'll hit me if I slip up at all. Is this some kind of exercise to help me control cursed ener? The boy questioned, receiving a quick nod from Gojo. But how am I supposed to know what to do? I've never done this before. Simple. Just think of something that makes you feel anger or hatred, or fear even. Just some kind of negative emotion will do, and once you've got that down I'll show you. To refine it into your innate technique. Gojo stated, walking away to leave the boy alone. The best way of learning is to figure it out for himself, he was pretty intuitive on. From what Gojo could tell, so teaching him was fairly simple. Something that makes me feel negative, the Greenette echoed, looking down at the doll, picking it up as he envisioned the ridicule and assault that he had dealt with them. His life because of a single person. Katsuki Bakugo. The doll would fall quiet, eventually falling asleep soon after. Ha! I did it URK. Izuku exclaimed, before letting his control waver and inevitably being cut off by the doll W. Up and slamming its fist straight into his gut. Uggish. Gojo would watch from afar, attempting to hold back his laugh at the Greenette's pain. It was honestly quite comical, but he knew that eventually the boy would get it down. Problem. He. You've got a ways to go, Midoriya-kun. As entertaining as it is to watch you get you beat by a doll, I'm bored. Brat. Why don't you just let me take control? Sukuna would question, forming a mouth onto the Greenette's hand as he sat cross-legged on the sand, with one hand holding the sleeping doll. Because I can't trust you, Sukuna. You'll try to kill people in my body. Izuku stated, his eyes closed as he focused on keeping the doll at bay. Plus, I'd rather learn to do myself. I have to become a hero. Hero this, hero that. Why are you so obsessed? The man questioned, his frustration growing as he was being forced to lay dormant as this kid went out to try and do something good. It was revolting. Because I don't want people to live like I have. I want to save people. It's the most admirable thing I could do as worthless as I am. Hell, I'm probably already fated to die. Because of you, I might as well make use of my life. Izuku stated, sighing as he opened his eyes to the sunset before him. Perhaps one day I could save you too. Save me. You dare suggest that I require saving? The man questioned further, his rage beginning to grow as he felt the Greenette was implying that the vengeful spirit W. Weak. There's nothing to save me from aside from your strange amount of willpower. Izuku sighed, you should be saved from yourself. You're a vengeful spirit. Vengeful, meaning you must have a vengeance for a reason. Perhaps I could help you overcome. Sukuna's smile grew. This kid was truly ignorant. You moron, I became a vengeful spirit in order to live forever. He revealed, scolding the boy for believing that he required saving. I wanted to be able to live on and rule over society like the cursed king I am. So you feared death? Izuku countered, smirking as the man fell silent. He'd soon feel the mouth on his hand disappear, and footsteps would near him causing the Greenette in his head to find Gojo Satoru himself, clad in his blindfold and onyx outfit from the first night they met. Ah, I see you managed to do it unconsciously, Midoriya-kun. Gojo congratulated, smiling at the boy as he pointed down at the doll. All it took was one day and he was able to feel for the constant flow of cursed energy. It was quite impressive. Nicely done. Oh, the boy exclaimed, surprised that he was managing such a feat before dropping the doll onto the sand and standing up to stretch. So now that I've got that down, W next. What's next is up to you. You've got two choices. Come with me and one of my acquaintances to show you a few useful tricks, or go home and miss out on further training. Sure, your family, Gojo started, before being cut off by the Greenette. Don't worry about my family, they won't mind. I'll come with you, Izuku said, dusting himself off. My mom hardly ever cares if I make it home safe or not. Let's go meet acquaintance of yours. Suddenly Izuku would hear Sukuna's voice in his head grumbling. He could tell the man was rolling his eyes. Oh great. More jujutsu sorcerers. Gojo would throw up a thumbs up and grin goofily as night began to fall around them. This was going to be Izuku's first mission. Alright, we're headed to Tokyo. Izuku stared at the boy in front of him. The black-haired boy stared back with a blank expression on his face until his eyebrows furrowed. Why was this kid just staring at that? Gojo had teleported him here after instructing the brunette to meet him here, but this was certainly unexpected. What? The boy questioned, scowling at the Greenette who stood before him. Gojo stood between the two of them like Izuku was some sort of shy puppy, but in truth the Greenette only had one question on his mind. What's with your hair? A vein would appear on the boy's forehead and he'd turn to glare at Gojo, who simply smiled like there was nothing wrong here. In fact, he was enjoying the hell out of this. Was probably going to tease the daylights out of him for this later. Fushiguro. This is Midoriya-kun. Midoriya-kun. Megumi Fushiguro. The blindfolded man introduced, pushing the curious Greenette in front of the slightly taller boy so that could shake hands. Pleasure to meet you, Fushiguro-san. Gojo-sensei hasn't told me anything about you, but I hope we get along. Izuku greeted, a small grin appearing on his face so that H could seem more welcoming. Megumi wasn't falling for it, especially not after his comment about his hair. Right, sensei. Why am I working with a kid? Megumi questioned, turning to Gojo, who simply had that dumb smirk on his face. Megumi really hated how energetic he was. Adult. Well, this kid is Sukuna's vessel, and he needs some proper jujutsu training, so you're going to act as a senpai today. The man revealed, smirking as Megumi's face Kanto. One of annoyance. Which reminds me, take this Midoriya-kun. Gojo would then hand the Greenette a sheathed dagger, causing the Greenette to sweat profusely as he stared at the man in confusion. Well, you can't exactly use your CU technique quite yet, so use this cursed weapon to make do for now. Megumi stared with wide eyes. You said he's Sukuna's vessel. As in Ryomen Sukuna. And he's sitting here conversing with us like everything's normal. We should kill high SS's shish, Fushiguro. Keep it a secret for me, K. The man requested with a finger held up to his mouth, tilting his head as if he was pleading with Megumi like a puppy. And, Midoriya-kun. Don't let Sukuna out. The Greenette nodded. TCH, whatever. Megumi stated, before turning to Izuku. So, Midoriya. We're going in here to take out a cursed spirit. Don't die because you're Han. The spirit. Me. Why do I have to do it? The boy questioned, watching as Megumi began to enter the abandoned building. Hey. Wait. Because this is for your training, not mine. I could easily take out a low-grade spirit like this. Megumi stated, turning to Gojo to see him nod in agreement approval. Izuku would feel the fear creep up on him and gulp anxiously before resolving himself to this. I guess you have a point, he stated, clutching the dagger's handle that laid at his hip. The two would disappear into the building, Gojo being able to see them due to T. Cursed energy output. The two boys would slowly and quietly creep up the stairs of the building, ominously waiting for some sign of a cursed spirit to reveal itself. Megumi would suddenly halt and a hand out to stop the Greenette. We'll get nowhere if we're sneaking around like this. I'll take the top floor and work my way down, and you search these floors and we'll meet up in the middle. If you nay, call my name and I'll send a chimera. He instructed, earning a nod of understanding from the Greenette as Megumi began to make his way up the stairs. As Izuku began to search the second floor, he began to get an eerie feeling as if he were being watched. Suddenly a spirit would pop out from the wall and try to slash at Th. Greenette with its mantis-like arms, only for Izuku to dodge and quickly extract his dagger from its sheath, slicing the creature's arm off. Do you need? The creature would utter in its pained whispers. Izuku furrowed his brow, readying himself to exorcise the spirit as it charged at him once more. The boy would dash to meet in halfway, sliding underneath its arm as it slashed at him once again so as to use his own dagger to cut the spirit in two, though only being a reach shallow enough to leave a deep gash. Shit, that wasn't enough, the boy would think, hearing the cackling of Sukuna in his mind as if this whole thing was entertaining to him. The Greenette would then rush T. Spirit once more, cutting off two of its mantis-like legs, forcing it to the ground where he backflipped into the air before slamming the dagger into its head. The boy would wiggle the knife deeper and deeper into the creature, watching as its purple blood began to pour from the wound before the creature would fall limp. Due to the workout he just went through. Phew, man, I can really move. He wiped his brow clean of his sweat before pulling the dagger out of the creature and rising to his feet. The Greenette would continue his trek up through the rest to build. Before entering an empty room, though he could hear Megumi's voice on the other side of the wall. Damn it. The boy grumbled, Izuku listened in as he spoke. He's got a hostage, he muttered, carefully surveying the situation before he came to the conclusion that H. Need backup. Before the brunette could even utter his next word, Izuku burst through the wall and slashed the spirit's hand off, freeing the child that the greenette now held in his arms. Megumi. Now. The boy commanded, eliciting the brunette to snap out of his shock and put his hands into a bird-like gesture. Nu. He called, beckoning the bird-like chimera forth, which immediately began to fly towards the spirit, slamming into it as electricity crackled around Nu. Soon the spur would fall, succumbing to the exorcism and disappearing into nothingness soon after. They had done it. The boys would soon exit the building, with Megumi having a newfound respect for the green-haired boy. He seemed to be quite motivated, and above all else his skill and physical prowess was something that not even some jujutsu sorcerers could manage. Seriously, what was the kid made of? Mission complete. Izuku proclaimed, yawning out of exhaustion as it was still night when they finished up. Gojo smiled and provided the two of them with a small thumbs. Great job you two. I see you've improved a lot, Midoriya-kun. Gojo said, smirking at Megumi like he was saying, I told you so. The brunette glared at his teacher. Alright, let's get you home, kid. Oi. We're not just gonna gloss over the fact you knew there was a higher grade spirit in there. Megumi scolded, but before he could begin to berate his teacher, both him and Izuku were gone. That bastard. So what was that mission for exactly? Izuku questioned, the two men standing outside of his apartment complex so that they could discuss a few things before the boy W. Home for the night. Really, it was just to see how you handle yourself in a fight, and I'll say you did exceptionally well for your first time. The man commended, patting the boy on the head. Though Izuku would flinch instinctively. Gojo's smile would fall. This poor boy must have gone through hell. Thanks. The greenette mumbled, before slapping the man's hand off of his head. So what's the plan from here on out? Am I gonna learn some cool techniques? Sorta. First we have to discover what your technique is, and we'll go from there. Ready yourself for the next gruesome 10 months. The man stated, taking a step back to signify his leave. The boy would nod, waving to the man as he watched him disappear out of thin air, most likely to get scolded by Megumi for his actions. The greenette would sigh, and his smile would fall. It was now time to get home, and honestly he didn't feel like going into that house. He knew he shouldn't, but he had no choice. He made his way to his floor, taking the stairs so that he could waste as much time as possible before he finally reached his door. He sighed and opened it, exhaling in really. Appeared that his faint mother was asleep in her room. Inko Midoriya, the boy's mother. She was a kind woman, but unknowingly for the past 14 years of Izuku's life she had constantly reminded him of his quirklessness. To accomplish his dreams, though he knew it was only out of concern for his well-being. She wanted him to be realistic because the world was cruel. But that didn't mean that she needed to be. And now he took every chance that he could to avoid her, but no matter what he couldn't hate her. She was his mother, and a indicator of that was sitting right in front of him. Katsuden left out for him, with a note telling him that she loved him. She would hope that in the morning the plate would be clean and she would know that he got home that he was okay. Izuku could feel the guilt rise within him, but this was for the best. Once he got into UA he could prove her wrong and hopefully they could reconcile. Hopefully they could mother and child once again. The boy took the plate of katsudon and headed for his room for the night. Truthfully, he was fairly hungry and this was a way to say thanks for her always looking out for H. The boy would silently enter his room to eat in silence before heading to bed. His room was filled with band posters, as well as a few All Might memorabilia sitting around. He'd smile at his hero before indulging himself in his meal. This was going to be own beginning into being the #1 hero. The greatest hero he could be. It's kind of weird. I worked so hard to be able to do this, but now that I'm here I don't really know if I can do this anymore. Izuku mumbled to himself, staring up at the massive school before him. This was the school he had always dreamed of attending, so why did being here to take the entrance exam feel so out of place for him? It's Pr. Just my nerves again. This is your one shot to do this. Before the greenette could even take a step forward, someone slammed into his back, making the greenette stumble forward slightly while whoever ran into him fell onto th. ground. Izuku quickly turned around worriedly, holding out a hand to help whoever had just run into him. Geez, I'm so sorry, are you alright? He knelt down, realizing that, upon closer inspection, it was a rather petite purple-haired girl. Her hair was short, and she seemed to been in a rush. Huh. Oh shit. Yeah, sorry, I should have watched where I was going. I'm just trying to get to my test area. She apologized, gratefully taking Izuku's hand before she was swiftly yanked back up onto her feet before she could even realize what was happening. Whoa. Holy crap dude, you're strong. Really? You just felt pretty light to me, Izuku mumbled, looking down at his hand as he released his hold on her own, clenching his hand a few times before lifting h. head back up to look at her. Anyways, where's your test area? We might be in the same testing group. She mumbled, pulling out her slip of paper informing her where she was headed. It was odd having someone treat her so friendly despite the fact they were basically competing to see who could make it into the hero course, but it was also pretty nice to have someone treat her so kindly instead of ignoring her entire existence. Group A. About you. Sweet. We're in the same group. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Izuku introduced, holding out his hand to the girl with a rather inviting smile. Holding up the paper of his own that same. Group A. On it in big bold letters. Man, this whole thing's pretty stressful, right? Really gets you nervous. The girl nodded in agreement. Yeah, it's pretty nerve-wracking. I'm Kyokujiro by the way, it's nice to meet you, you seem friendly. Do I? I don't normally hang around others that often. But it's nice to meet you too, your quirk looks pretty interesting. Izuku replied, smiling a bit innocently as she shook hand. Upon processing his comment about her jacks, the girl began to pull on them idly, perhaps out of self-consciousness. Oh, yeah, they're nothing special, she stated, waving her free hand dismissively before gesturing with her finger to the building they were standing in front of. More importantly, we should head inside. Don't want to be late, right? Oh, right. Yeah, let's head inside. Izuku's attention suddenly shifted as he turned and began to walk beside the girl, headed for the main entrance of the building where other students were flooding in. But do you mind if I ask you about your quirk later? I'm really interested in that sort of thing. I love analyzing abilities and heroes. Kyoka awkwardly nodded, confused that someone like him was showing some sort of interest in her. He just seemed like a nice guy. It'd be such a shame if someone like didn't become a hero. Yeah, sure. We can talk after the exam. Izuku sat in his seat beside the girl from before, and unfortunately, the one person in the world that he couldn't stand. Katsuki Bakugo, the same person who made it make his life a living hell. The hell are you doing here, Deku? Bakugo whispered through grit teeth, his anger being present through the massive vein on his forehead that looked like it could be you. Any moment. Izuku groaned quietly and silently wished he could slam his head into the table in front of him. Deku. Dude, what's his problem? Kyoka questioned, turning to Izuku concerned, hoping that he may have some sort of explanation to this sassy lost child. Did they each other? Turning to her, Izuku sighed and shook his head. Don't worry about it, he mumbled as Present Mike continued to go on to explain the written and physical portion of the exam. Screw that, she whispered, raising her hand to interrupt the pro-hero's speech. Sorry about this, sir. She apologized before turning to the blonde beside Izuku. Hey, quacking like some stupid kid and insulting him, you act like other people can't hear you, and frankly it speaks volumes of your character. I doubt you'd even make it into the course if you're gonna act like that. Bakugo's hand slammed down onto the table in front of him, but before the boy could utter his next word, Izuku placed a hand to his shoulder, forcing him down with a str. Enough grip to warrant a grunt of pain from him. Sit back down, Jiro-chan. Izuku instructed, his eyes remaining on Bakugo's as the two boys glared at one another, their pressure causing the other kids around them to flinch nervously. Sorry for the disturbance, sir. If it were me, I would have killed both of them. The deep voice of Ryoman Sukuna spoke, causing the greenette to remember that the man was still inside of his psyche. Seriously, how have you let these people walk all over you like this? You and that Gojo brat are so annoying. It's because I'm a decent person, Sukuna. Besides, I'd rather not deal with you right now, I'm trying to focus. He countered, sighing in relief as present Mike seemed to mow. From their outburst, along with some of the other students who were honestly just trying to get past the fact that him and Bakugo were about to kill one another. Decent person. How laughable. A decent person wouldn't lie about their emotions and try to hide their rage. I can feel your anger, you know. What? You want me to act like you? I never claimed to be a good person, I just live by my own desires. I do what I will and want, you should try it sometime, you spineless brat. Yeah, I'll do that when Jennifer Lawrence calls me to hook up. Who? Sukuna questioned, his tone indicating the curious expression on his or maybe rather Izuku's face. Never mind. Izuku replied, turning to Kyoka who seemed to be staring at him with her eyebrows furrowed in annoyance. Don't try to start something on my behalf, he'd bother me that much, I promise. Quote. If you say so. Still, it's not right, dude. You're actually pretty cool and he shouldn't be treating you like that. She whispered in response, crossing her arms as she leaned in her chair. Seriously, why is he even acting like that towards you? Ooh, this is good. You gonna tell her the truth, or lie to her face? Either way, she'll reject you entirely, it's no use trying to add her to your harem. Sukuna antagonized, see. Izuku to furrow his brow in annoyance. I'm not adding her to any harem, Sukuna. What kind of person do you take me for? Izuku rolled his eyes before thinking of a proper way to answer Kyoka's question. Seemed to not really notice his physical reactions to Sukuna's mental messages. Let's just say, he's never really liked me. We've known each other since we were kids, a superiority complex and doesn't like that I challenge his authority. So, he's just a dick. Izuku laughed at her rather simple conclusion, but nodded in confirmation. That pretty much summed up Bakugo's character, at least as far as Izu. Aware. Fucking hell. Talk about small dick energy. Would you two quiet down? If you're not going to listen to what present Mike has to say, then leave. A tall blue-haired boy spoke suddenly, rising to his feet as he pointed. Two of them with a closed palm. And present Mike sensei, didn't you say there would be 4 different opponents during this exam? Ah, sorry. Izuku apologized, giving the brunette an apologetic expression as Kyoka stared at him rather annoyed at him calling the two of them out. Sukuna seconded motion. How dare he talk to his host like that, and how dare Izuku not get angry over it? Good observation, young listener. There are 4 battle drones in place, but the 4th doesn't count for anything, so if you see it I'd suggest steering clear of it. The loud explained. Kyoka winced at his volume. How she had been drowning it out before was a mystery, but now that she had tuned back in, she was in for a deafening experience. Izuku noticed the girl covering her ears and frowned. Her quirk must give her sensitive hearing or something because she really wasn't enjoying this whole experience. Looked like she was in pain. Luckily enough, after a few more words from the pro hero, the students were to take the exam, first the written portion, which went by relatively smoothly, and now they getting ready for the physical portion of the exam. Izuku had changed out of his middle school uniform and was now adorned in some rather casual workout gear. A blue tank top and green shorts, not the best thing to wear. You're up against robots, but seeing the kind of training and techniques he had acquired while learning under Gojo, he'd be well enough off to handle himself. I wonder if Jiro's around here anywhere. Izuku stretched his arms as he let his mind wander before the start of the test, yawning after he had finished. Are you seriously yawning? Your infectious fatigue is going to affect the performance of the same glasses-wearing brunette from before commented, adjustee. Frames on his face angrily as Izuku cut him off. Dude, would you get off my case? Seriously, if you're gonna complain this entire time then go home, weirdo. Izuku interrupted, scowling at the brunette before drowning. The noise of the other students. He was here to pass this thing, he didn't have time for some idiot. You're starting to sound like me, cut it out, brat. Sukuna's voice interrupted, snapping the brunette out of his trance. Oh, would you shut up? I've got to focus. Izuku started to respond before he noticed that many of the other students had begun to run straight into the testing area, gain head start on the brunette. Shit. Dashing in after them at top speeds, the brunette zoomed past many of the students who were destroying some one-pointers, making his way to a certain section of the urban city where there were loads of three-pointers waiting, primed and ready to be broken. For the first time of the day, Izuku allowed his negative emotions to consume him, fueling his cursed energy that he would then pour into his fists, his stance resembling a Taekwondo practitioner's Juchum Seogi. His fists began to emanate a green aura and the brunette rushed forward in an instant, slamming his fist straight into the first pointer. The metal plating caved in at the impact of Izuku's first strike, but nothing that were enough to destroy or deactivate the robot. And then came the second impact. The robot completely folded under the pressure of the second impact, causing the crater that was already present in the metal plating to deepen while simultaneously launching the robot back a few yards and straight into another three-pointer. 6 points. Oh, I did it. Divergent fist works like a charm. He cheered, grinning ear to ear before turning to the two-pointer approaching him, getting right back in his stance with a confident smirk. Come at me. I'm more than ready. Now that the brunette had found his rhythm, he wasted no time in racking up as many points as he could, earning up to a good 29 points on his own before it seemed as there were hardly any robots left for him to fight. It was a tad frustrating too, he was surprisingly having fun being able to keep up with the other contestants despite his quirkless status. Holy shit. What is that? A voice shouted, gaining the attention of Izuku and a few other students present as they pointed up past one of the more skyscraper ESC building. There stood a massive robot with 8 glowing red eye sensors, peering over the skyscraper before swatting at it with its massive mechanical claws, causing rubble to rain due towards the students. Many students began to run away and shout in fear, but Izuku's attention was stuck on something else. The rubble falling from the destroyed top half of the skyscraper Watto land on another student. He needed to do something, and fast. He couldn't just run away and let someone almost lose their life. Without giving the situation any more thought, the brunette charged forward, running as fast as he could, and in a matter of seconds the brunette was in front of the victim, winding his fist all the way back before striking the falling concrete and glass and shattering it to pieces, with only a few pebbles falling on him and the person behind him. Turning to the person behind him, he was shocked to find that it was that same purple-haired girl from before, staring at him wide-eyed. His speed and power seemed unknown. Just how quickly he was able to save her from certain death was baffling. Oh. Hey Juro. You alright? Not hurt, are you? He greeted nonchalantly, dusting off the pebbles and dust that littered his body with one of his hands before holding his Hato her for the second time today. Nearly lost you there. You should be more careful. You, right, yeah. Thanks for the help. Again. She replied, taking his hand before being yanked up to her feet just as quick as the first time. The brunette grinned before turning his head towards an alleyway and jogging over to it. Hey wait, where are you going? I'm gonna go take down that giant robot. He replied nonchalantly, hitting his fist into his palm as an idea popped into his head. Hey, do me a favor and listen in for any you've got sensitive hearing, right? People might still be trapped under the rubble, and since I'm gonna take care of the source, I need you to save the others. What? You expect me to be able to save anyone out there? Dude, I can't lift a damn thing. She countered, but the brunette was already stretching in preparation. Ho, you even gonna fight that thing? Izuku pointed a finger up at the roof of the two buildings they were standing in between. I'm gonna go up there, and deck that thing right in its giant robot schnoz. What? Schnoz? She mumbled questioningly as Izuku began to jump from wall to wall, scaling the buildings in a matter of seconds as he shouted down to her. I'm counting on you. He shouted, making his way up to the rooftop as he scouted the area, quickly spotting the massive robot making its way towards another group of students. He sighed. Is no one else going to fight this thing with him? Geez. You could always let me deal with it. Sukuna piped up, bored out of his mind as he sat on his throne, constructed out of skulls and other morbid items. And let you go on a massacre. No thanks. Izuku snorted as he replied, allowing his cursed energy to flow throughout his body once more as he made a dash for the Zero-Pointer's massive head. Hey, automated freak. The Zero-Pointer slowly turned its massive head to the abrupt threat indicated in its sensors, coming face to face with a green-haired teenager running towards it from the rooftops at full speed. The boy made a great leap, winding back his arm for perhaps the greatest punch he'd ever throw, directed straight for the massive robot that threatened the safety of the kids taking the entrance exam. With all his might, as soon as he was close enough to strike the robot as hard as he could, he flung his fist forward. Once again, the first strike caved in only a small portio. The metal plating, but as the second impact of his strike came into play due to his cursed energy, the greenette caused a massive crater the size of a boulder into the head. Massive robot, successfully disabling it. Onlookers watched in awe as the greenette displayed his abilities, the massive crater in the robot's head evidence of the great strength that he possessed. Before he seemed like any other kid, rather plain, and no flashiness to his quirk, but now that he was on full display, the greenette was the star of the show. He was the only one theoretically to take down the Zero-Pointer, and he did it with a gracious smile. Helping a few of the other students who were trapped in the rubble, Kyoka watched in amazement as Izuku was successful in his plan to deck that thing right in its giant schnoz. As odd as he had phrased it, he did exactly what he said he would. That guy's amazing. She heard the person who she was saving mumble. The girl nodded in agreement. He was amazing, and it was almost inspiring to see him acting as heroic as he was friendly. He was one of the good ones, as some would say. Those assessing the exam watched with their interests piqued. There was a new face in the world of heroism, and it just so happened that he was quirkless according to his documentation. He was an interesting student, but was he really quirkless? How was he able to take down a 5-ton megabot with a single blow? He's interesting, but very irrational. What did you say his name was again? A gruff voice questioned, turning to a smaller rodent-like man as he pulled out a small file with Izuku's information on it. Izuku Midoriya. It stated that he's quirkless, and he went to Aldera Junior High. One of the other testers went there as well, and his quirk is quite impressive. A bit crass, however. The rodent man replied, handing the file over to the rough-looking icon of insomnia. He certainly looks a little plain. Are we sure there's nothing else to him? There's no way he could be quirkless with power like that. Another voice chimed in, this one Sue. A bit robotic and feminine as it was a woman in a rather puffy space suit. I'm with 13 on this. We may need to look further into him. The gruff man from before agreed, handing the file back to the rodent man as they all watched the gree begin to plummet to the ground. Well, it says here that he has the physique of an Olympic athlete. I wouldn't put it against him if he was just that physically gifted, the rather positive-sounding rodent M mumbled, before turning to a rather short old woman who was seated beside him. Recovery girl, you may want to make your way out there. I have a feeling he's gonna end. Your gift especially. Sighing, the woman nodded, of course. These youngsters are always risking it all these days. Returning to Izuku, he was now plummeting to his death, the robot he had just destroyed toppling over as well. He now had no way to get back down onto the ground safe. Was due to impact with the ground in a few seconds. Panic ensued. Ah, Sukuna. Help, help. Izuku shouted, begging for assistance as he neared the ground. The vengeful spirit sighed as the greenette relented control. The tattoos already beginning to form on his body. You're lucky I'm bored out of my mind, brat. Sukuna expressed, quickly using his hands to vault off the ground that he neared like it was nothing, performing a perfect somersault so that he'd land back on his feet. Seriously, I'm not some merciful god that you can beg for a sister. Midoriya. That was insane. How did you do that? Kyoka appeared, jogging over to what she presumed was the greenette, surprised that he had come out of that hole alive and relatively uninjured. And when the hell did you get tattoos? It was true, the greenette was now sporting a few black tattoos on his body. And his hair seemed to stand up more than usual. Hell, even his nails appeared longer than Bihei, almost seemed like an entirely different person. Sukuna's expression shifted to one of annoyance. Seriously, I really don't understand what he sees, he began to reply before Izuku forced Sukuna back into his mind. Izuku's body was reverted back to normal. Wait. What was the question again? Kyoka rubbed her eyes before looking at the greenette again. Had his body just shifted before her very eyes, or was she just crazy? Perhaps her fatigue was getting to her. That must have been the case. Never mind. I'm just glad you're alright, she stated through a sigh before noticing a small old lady approaching the two of them. Her face twisted in confusion while Star in the greenette beside her. How are you still standing? I could have sworn you almost plummeted to your death, she mumbled to herself, making her way over to the greenette and inspecting. You're the youthful hero, recovery girl. Wow, it's so great to meet you, Izuku greeted excitedly, his eyes shining with amazement at the little old lady. Yes, well, it's lovely to meet a young fan such as yourself. Would you like some candy? Here, take some candy. The woman pulled out a handful of small sweets and handed them to the two teens, which they took graciously. You're an interesting one. You're supposedly quirkless, yet you were doing so well out there. Got any secrets? We here are very interested in you. Izuku recalled his teachings with the white-haired man, Gojo Satoru. He had promised never to reveal anything to the general public, and instead opted to regrettably lie to old woman. And no, not really. I'm just really strong, I guess. But I'm very grateful to hear that people have taken an interest in me. Wait, Midoriya, you're quirkless. The perplexed beside the boy questioned, her eyes widening in concern at the realization that everything that he had just done he had basically done powerless. He was just rushing into danger and surviving like it was nothing with his own powerless body. She seriously thought that he just had some sort of stamina, or strength enhancement quirk. Yeah, I really don't have any quirk to speak of, I've just always been relatively fit and wanted to be a hero, he explained, shrugging nonchalantly as if everything Thad done prior to this conversation was perfectly normal for someone without a quirk. There was a pause before Kyoka said anything else. Dude, you're incredible. So what's with this talk of quirks? I have no recollection of any of this before I met my end. Sukuna stated as Izuku made his way off of the UA campus. Testing was over. Now it was time to head home and wait for any sort of letter of acceptance or rejection in the coming days. Really? Nothing. Quirks started popping up like generations ago, I think. Humans evolved to just have certain abilities after a certain point. The greenette explained, Saint. Through the gates of UA as he stared up at the sky and sighed. UA was interested in him, but did that mean they wanted him in the hero course, or was it something else? Wasn't sure. I see. Sukuna replied before going dead silent. It seemed that he would process that information for quite some time. It must have been a culture shock to find out the world you had once ruled had changed so much. Dude. The greenette let out a high-pitched squeal as he jumped out of a mixture of fear and surprise before instantly calming down once he realized who had called out to him. Oh. Hey Jiro. What are you doing here? Well, you said you wanted to talk to me about my quirk, but I'm honestly feeling pretty tired, so. She explained, pulling out her phone and handing it to the greenette. Me your number. We can meet up whenever we're both free. Wait, seriously. He started, pointing a finger out to her. You want to actually hang out with me? Well, yeah, why is that such a surprise? She questioned, tilting her head curiously as she raised a brow. Why was he so shocked by this? He was a nice guy, and it seemed she could get along with him. It's nothing. It's just, I haven't had anyone willing to hang out with me since actually, I don't even know how long it's been. He trailed off, cupping his chin as he tried to remember the last time he had any sort of friends. Anyways, Yeah, I'd love to hang out sometime, he continued before pausing abruptly as his cheeks reddened. Are you asking me out on a date? What? No. Moron. I just meant as friends. She shouted, her face reddening with embarrassment as Izuku sighed in relief, though the blush on his face didn't quite leave. Yet. Oh, thank God. I almost died of embarrassment, he replied, placing a hand to his chest as he took her phone and began to input his number. Sorry. I'm just a lot more awkward around people than I'd like to admit. It's been rough growing up quirkless. Kyoka frowned. It has to do with that blonde kid, doesn't it? Did he bully you in school? Izuku paused before handing the phone back to her, looking out into the distance. The brunette shrugged. He didn't really know how to answer that question, it was definite. More than just bullying. I guess I just wasn't a human being to him. There are times in a person's life where things change. A sudden shift of the wind, or maybe even the flap of a butterfly's wings. A small change such as that could shift the entire course of one's life, and in some instances Izuku Midoriya feels that is the case with his own situation. So, they're interested in my sweet little pupil. A real compliment to my teaching skills, don't you think? The white-haired man known as Gojo Satoru spoke, the rising sun, illuminating his pale complexion and providing some light to reflect off of his round sunglasses. A powerless child, excelling at tasks that even the most powerful in the woe could find themselves struggling at, sure could make some headlines. Right. I almost don't know how to feel. It's exciting, but I don't want to be accepted just for a publicity stunt. I want my skills to be acknowledged. Izuku replied, venting concerns towards Ua and his possible admittance to the prestigious academy. They're interested, but interested how exactly? Same thing with that girl I told you about, seem to want to be friends, but why? Am I overthinking it? I mean, I don't normally talk to people that often, so just casually exchanging numbers like that makes me feel stoop. Gojo shouted abruptly, interrupting the brunette before he went on a long tangent about his worries. Izuku flinched instinctively at the sheer surprise of his actions, but per Gojo's instructions, he halted completely and let the man continue. You've got to relax, kid. You were trained by the strongest, you have nothing to fear in of them acknowledging your skill. As for the girl, you're going to meet her later today, right? That's the perfect chance to find out. Yeah, but doesn't it seem a bit odd to you? What do you mean? I mean, she just wanted to be my friend after everything that happened during the entrance exam. What should I do? He questioned, leaning back against the wall as his head up to stare at the clouds now beginning to shift hues as the sun began to rise even higher. Overthinking like this is exactly why girls don't like you. Gojo stated bluntly, causing Izuku to place a hand over his heart as if to say it were broken by his words. Beside, what do I care about your social life? You have to worry about keeping Sukuna under control. How has that been going, by the way? I dunno, same as usual. He's pretty quiet unless something riles him up. Oh, and he always complains about being bored. Izuku answered, recalling the many feuds T have had due to Sukuna wanting to be out and about in the world, yet never having the strength to do so. Say, you explained that those fingers of his will make him strong. But what about me? Will I get any boosts like a Rasengan or something? Gojo smiled at Izuku's question, turning his head towards the boy as he continued to gaze up at the sky. Eventually the man's silence would bother the brunette enough T would turn to face him, yet Gojo simply tilted his shades down and stared the boy in the eyes. Who knows? He answered softly, a mischievous glint being present in his gaze as he fixed his sunglasses back over the bridge of his nose. Izuku frowned, pouting with a huff at the man who rarely ever actually provided any proper answers. He'd mumble under his breath, what kinda answer is that? But he well enough to leave the matter alone. Well, what about my training? Anything I should do, or any other missions to speak of? Not really. I have Megumi in the area to keep an eye out, but keep on trying to get a proper hold of Divergent Fist. If you're going to be using at least one move, you hone it to the absolute limits. He explained, fixing the rolled-up sleeves of his blue button-up as the black jacket that he usually wore was draped over his shoulders. Enif. Should get going. Sorcerer stuff and all that. Just don't blow it on your little date, Midoriya-kun. It's not a da. Izuku turned to protest, but Gojo had already vanished in thin air. The man was gone with the wind, a unique ability indeed. But not one that he favored. His mentor used it purely to get away from him. I guess I better get ready to meet up with Jiro. Izuku let out a sigh. I wonder what I should wear. The city was just as bustling as always. People scurried about with their own goals in mind as shopkeepers and their workers tried to rack in paying customers, and yet Alo found herself waiting about in a plaza for a certain someone to show up. For a guy who seemed to be faster than most on foot, he sure was taking his time to get here. She glanced up from her phone for the umpteenth time, checking her surroundings for any sort of familiar green bush, yet there wasn't a hit of him in sight. Had he stood H? Sighing, she glanced down at her phone once more, opening up her messaging app in order to send a text to find out where he was, but just as she did, she felt a soft tap on right shoulder. Sorry. Did you wait long? Just the boy she had been waiting for spoke gently, his body language almost seeming nervous as he put on a shaky smile. I should have I was running late, but there was this incident on the train and… It's fine. I'm just glad you found your way here. She replied, interrupting his nervous tangent before taking in his appearance, primarily his outfit. This was her first time him in anything casual, and likely vice versa. Izuku had on a white and red tracksuit jacket that was open to reveal a black versus neck tee and a silver necklace with an X pendant. She hated to say it, but Kyoka could quite a bit of muscle definition from his shirt. He had on black high-water chino pants, and as always, his traditional red high tops. Right, yeah, I just got hung up on what was the right thing to wear when hanging out with friends. Like I said, it's been a while, he commented anxiously, rubbing his neck as his body seemed to relax just a tad. Speaking of, you look really good. I like that shirt, but I've hardly listened to any of the band's music. Glancing down at her own outfit, she seemed surprised that Izuku was at least a little knowledgeable of her favorite band Deep Dope. She had on a navy blue sleeveless turtleneck with the words, Deep Dope, inscribed on the front, white Bermuda shorts, and navy blue skate shoes with white laces to match it all. As for her accessories, she to wear some spike bracelets and a studded belt. Oh, thanks. Honestly, I'm surprised you know about Deep Dope, they're kinda underground. She replied gratefully, a slight blush dusting her cheeks at the compliment. But it was mostly just due to being caught off guard. She wasn't used to receiving compliments, but considering who she was currently with, neither was he. You look pretty good too. I think I prefer casual Midoriya as opposed to your school uniform. Izuku seemed to perk up slightly at that. Oh, really? Well, if this goes well, maybe we should hang out more casually like this. Might be fun to do this from time to time. Kyoka nodded in agreement. Yeah, that might be nice. Anyways, shall we get going? The cafe's down the block. Right. Lead the way. And thus, the Perplet began to lead the Greenette to their location, the two engaging in small talk about what had been happening between the entrance exam. Kyoka found that Izuku had spent most of his time still continuing to train just because he didn't want to get too comfortable sitting on his butt. Kyoka, on the other hand, explained how she used most of her free time after the exam, trying to calm herself from worrying about the results. She tried her hardest to stay distracted, but up until today she hasn't really had much to do other than sit around. After a few minutes of walking, the duo soon found themselves at their destination, a little cafe with a small sign on the window showcasing their specials and deals. It was homey, and even had the lovely smell of coffee and pastries filling their noses as they entered. Wow. This place is really nice. Izuku commented upon entering, taking in the decor and all-around vibe of the place. It wasn't an overcrowded shop like many of the one had been to before, but it definitely wasn't a struggling business. Right. I come here all the time, it's mainly because they let performers in the area come here and promote themselves. Kyoka pointed out, pointing a finger towards th. Side of the shop where there was a small stage with a few mics still set up. Though I usually come at night when some of the more underground artists come by. You seem to really like music. Do you make any of your own? Izuku inquired as the two made their way up to the counter and rang the bell in order to get a server with tea. As soon as possible. Oh, yeah, sometimes. It's not anything major. I mainly just play a lot of instruments. She answered, toying with her bracelet idly just to do something with her hand. Sing sometimes, but I'm not really any good. I doubt I'd be able to produce something worthwhile. Well, you won't know unless you get some feedback. Maybe I could hear you sing sometime. I bet your own music is great. Izuku said nonchalantly, giving the perplexed, courteous smile before what looked like the owner of the store came by. It was an older-looking gentleman, slicked back gray hair, glasses, and a bit of facial hair with a blah polo shirt on along with a black apron. Welcome in. Sorry about the wait, I was taking out the trash. What can I get you two today? He questioned with a gentle smile, his eyes scanning the two teens before on the familiar face of the perplexed beside Izuku. Ah, Jiro-san, it's nice to see you. How are your parents? They're doing well, Ito-san. I'm just here to introduce my friend here to your shop. She replied politely, pointing her thumb to the greenette beside her as he glanced bet. The two interacting. This is Izuku Midoriya. I met him during the entrance exam. You should have seen him out there. He's pretty incredible. Wait. Jiro, you don't have to. Izuku tried to interrupt but to no avail as this, Ito-san, cut him off. Oh, come of it. She's paying you a compliment. Besides, any friend of hers has to be something special. It's a pleasure to meet you, Midoriya-kun. I'm so Ito. He greeted, bowing as he introduced himself, causing Izuku to somewhat panic and do the same in return. Likewise, you have a lovely store. He said, returning the gesture of respect in kind by paying his compliment forward as Kyoka failed to hide her laugh at his ridiculous nature. Laughing at me isn't helping. Sorry. Let's just get our drinks. I'll have a cappuccino, you know how I like it. She stated, twirling one of her jacks around her finger idly as Izuku glanced at Ami. He could prepare his order. I think I usually get an Americano. Izuku mumbled, luckily being heard by Ito. The man wrote down the two's orders and gave Kyoka a nod before he went off tea. Their drinks for them. Alright, come on, we can sit over by the window. Kyoka suggested, pointing to a small table that gave the two a view of the outdoors. As they sat down, Izuku recalled conversation he had with his mentor prior to coming out here and decided now was as good a time as any to figure out her deal. Hey, do you mind if I ask you something? Izuku requested, crossing his arms over the table, making sure to look the girl across from him in the eyes as he wanted to that this wasn't entirely ill-natured. You just did. She joked in response, smirking as Izuku furrowed his brow before realizing that she was just messing with him. Alright. Yeah, ask away. Alright. Well, why did you want to befriend me on that day? You know, after even finding out that I was quirkless, I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way. Not to. Don't appreciate it, just that I don't really understand it. He revealed, letting out a low sigh at the end of his sentence as Kyoka glanced out the window to give the quest some proper thought before giving her answer. That was a good question if Kyoka were to be frank. She wasn't normally the type to go out of her way like this and make a pal. But Izuku just had a rather alluring aura. Perhaps it was just that he was unique in comparison to everyone else that she'd ever met. When you grow up in this superpowered society, you see so many unique and different attributes, but at some point it began to feel like the norm. It was a gray-filled colorful world. But despite all of that, there was someone like Izuku. He didn't have much in terms of notable features aside from his green hair. He looked like your average teenager, but held a secret that seemed like such an oddity. He was powerless, and yet probably more powerful than most of the superpowered people you could find in the world, exclumite of course. He stood out, just by blending in, but given more thought that might have been why his life was so unfavorable. You're unique. I mean, sure you look pretty plain, but you're really intriguing. You went out of your way to help me twice, while everyone else around me was too absorbed in their own lives. Maybe I was just lucky, but I just got the vibe that I needed to keep you around. She explained, continuing to stare out of the window beside her as Sheila back a bit in her chair before continuing. Sorry, I'm not too good with my words. Izuku shook his head. No, I think I get it. Just a gut feeling, right? Something telling you needed to act. Kyoka smiled and turned to face the boy before nodding. Yeah, exactly. Aside from that, you just seemed like good company. A stand-up sorta guy that everyone would lee. Again, I really don't see what you mean by that. Are you sure you got the right guy? Is there not another Midoriya that you know? He joked, cupping his chin as if to say. We're in deep thought, earning a chuckle from the girl across from him. Maybe that one's not quirkless. Oh shut it, even if that blonde asshole doesn't like you, I can guarantee that we'll be good friends. And if not, you can have your revenge at any time. Deal. Kyoka propo. Jokingly, reaching a hand across the table for the greenette to shake. Deal. Izuku confirmed, taking her hand within his own and giving it a light shake, noting that her handshake was a lot stronger than he'd expect for someone of her stature. Besides, she started as the two released each other's hands and leaned back into their respective seats. You being quirkless was never going to be a problem. Most P wouldn't care. I'm pretty sure it's just those a-holes from your school. Matter of fact, I can prove it. Right at that moment, himself appeared with a tray carrying the teens' respective beverages. Alright, here you are, you two. Please enjoy. Oh, before you go, Kyoka spoke up, pointing her index finger towards Izuku with a smirk. Did you know that Midoriya here is quirkless? He did exceedingly well on the entrance exam and he didn't even have a quirk. Really? I must say, I don't think I've ever heard of such a thing. The man stated with surprise in his tone, to be quirkless in this time and still take up the challenge, duh. Pretty admirable. I'm sure a life of hardships have led you up to this, huh? Izuku looked down thoughtfully, an embarrassed smile gracing his lips as he shook his head. And no, it wasn't anything quite like that. I was dealt what the world gave me. Was tough, but I like to think that the fire inside burned a lot brighter than the fire around me. Kyoka and shared a look with one another, each with their own respective smiles due to the boy's perseverance. Then placed down the tray and handed the two their drink before speaking once more. Well, young man, make sure that fire lives forever.